On your Wednesday episode of Locked On Raptors, it feels like the Raptors' perch in the top six is a little bit precarious going into the stretch run, but I'm here to tell you it's okay. Don't worry, they're pretty much a lock.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors. It is Wednesday, February the 18th, and I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Raptors for 12 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on Blue Sky. Find the show on Instagram. Join us in the Locked On Raptors Discord server. As always, link in the description of the podcast, 100% free to become part of our listener community. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And we're off and running here on a Wednesday edition of the podcast, still riding out the All-Star break. And later on in the show, I'm going to take advantage of this one last fleeting day before basketball returns for your Toronto Raptors to do the thing that we all do during the All-Star break, which is complain and moan about things we wish would be fixed about the NBA. We've talked a lot about tanking and sort of other things over the last week or so on this podcast and the general NBA discourse. And there's a few other things I want to get off my chest before we wrap. And that will be the last couple episodes of today's show, where I'm commissioned for a day before retiring and moving back to talking about basketball, which I'm very excited to do. But off the top, I do want to talk about the race for the top six seeds in the Eastern Conference and where the Raptors sit, and whether or not you, dear listener at home, should be concerned about the Raptors falling from their current perch in the fifth seed into the play-in range in that 7 to 10 mass of mid-ass Eastern Conference teams. And frankly, spoiler alert, I don't think you should be worried. And we're going to kind of run through all the different teams that are in the running for the top six in the Eastern Conference. And while, yes, the Raptors have not been perfect of late. Their offense has had its troubles. They've lost to good teams. They play a lot of good teams down the stretch. I just don't think you need to be all that worried about the Raptors having some kind of down the stretch collapse here, because A, they're playing better than a lot of the teams behind them, and B, the teams that are playing very well, it's quite a long haul for them to actually catch the Raptors with not a whole lot of runway left. And so let's get into it, right? Like, the Raptors, again, currently 6th seed. It does feel as though, and this is the bad news, like the top four chances are kind of slipping away. The Pistons, Celtics, Knicks, and Cavs have kind of separated themselves. The point differentials are telling us that, the Cavs are up to a +4 point differential. The Knicks and Celtics and Pistons are all in the range of +6 to +8 point differential. Usually a pretty good barometer of elite teams, and all those teams are very far ahead of where the Raptors sit right now. A +1.5 point differential for the Raptors so far this year. A little bit better if you go to Cleaning the Glass and look at the net ratings and all that, and you chop out garbage time, which I think is a useful thing to do. But it's pretty clear the Pistons, Celtics, Knicks, and Cavs are kind of making it clear that they are the class of the conference, and that's fine. The Raptors did not come into the season with any expectation to be a home court first round team. They obviously were holding on to home court for quite some time. The Cavs getting on a heater here. James Harden just playing basketball games in a way that Darius Garland was not playing basketball games, on top of bringing all the good stuff James Harden brings to a team, at least in the honeymoon phase. The Cavs are very good, and I think they're pretty clearly, cementing themselves as a top four team. And the Raptors are going to be, I think, duking it out for fifth with the teams below them. And that, again, that's not a bad thing. Obviously, if the Raptors can kind of go on a heater here, they're only 2 games back of the Cavs. They're 3 games back of the Knicks. It's not like it's over by any means. It's not done and dusted. Injuries can happen, all of this stuff. But all things being equal, it seems as though the top 4 dream is kind of slowly dissipating here for the Raptors, which, again, not the end of the world, especially because I just don't really see a whole lot in the way of threats to the Raptors. Not even just like making the top 6, but frankly, hanging on to the 5th seed. I think they are pretty obviously the sort of odds-on favorite to be the 5th seed. And let's just go through the teams that are kind of chasing them and why I'm not terribly scared of any of them. The Sixers, they're basically an even point differential team for the season. They are 6th at 30 and 24, a game and a half back of the Raptors, 2 games back in the win column, 1 in the loss column. Look, the Sixers at full tilt with a healthy Paul George and Joel Embiid on the floor are really, really good. But Joel Embiid is dealing with knee stuff again because this is what happens when Joel Embiid is on a team. It's just the sad reality of Joel Embiid's late career. It's just what it is. You have, of course, VJ Edgecombe is like the second most important player on the Sixers, barring a healthy Joel Embiid. And that is tough when you're a rookie. And as good as he's been, there's only so much you can do as a rookie if you're the second most important player on a team. They just traded away Jared McCain, who in theory could have been helpful to them for a team that is not very deep. They didn't really go and add any depth to the team at the deadline. They really just ducked the tax, and that was it, and gave up a rotation player in the process, or a theoretical rotation player. It's not like McCain was playing a ton, but like Maxi's amazing, but I like with Paul George still suspended for a whole bunch more games. They are kind of flagging right now. They've lost 2 in a row coming into the break. They just don't look terribly frightening. And frankly, they're not a team that's really good at any one thing. They are, again, basically an even point differential team. They are 16th in offense, 14th in defense. They don't hang their hat on anything. And the Raptors, I think, have that elite defense to kind of hang on and sort of drive them to wins that maybe they shouldn't even be getting, just because they can stay close in games and keep the margins slim because their defense is so good. It's just, yeah, I'm not really sweating too much about the Sixers. Although, if I had to pick a team to be the 6th seed, they're probably the odds-on favorite just because they are ahead in the standings, and Tyrese Maxey's still real good, and you'll probably get some Embiid at some point down the stretch. But yeah, they're not in the greatest of shape right now. Not a very deep team, and I just don't think that's going to be conducive to a lot of late season winning for them. You have the Orlando Magic, who was just announced today. Franz Wagner is going to miss more time with the ankle injury that's caused him to miss 25 of the last 29 games. And of course, this team is kind of a disaster anyway. The offense has been, slightly better than it's been in the years past, but not much better. The defense has fallen off a cliff. This was the thing that made the Magic great last year was, okay, their defense is just disgusting. They're like the number 2 defense in the league. I think they're like 15th right now. They've completely fallen off on that end. It just hasn't really worked. The fit's been off. The injuries have obviously been a huge part of it. Paolo's been his worst version of himself basically since his rookie year. And it's just not a team that I think is really giving off very threatening vibes at the moment. In fact, I would probably say with the latest on Franz Wagner, I think it's more likely the Magic fall down from 7th to 9th and host the 9-10 play-in game than it is that they climb into the top 6 in the Eastern Conference. They're a game and a half back of the Sixers right now, 3 back of the Raptors. They're 4 wins behind the Raptors. I just don't see it for the Magic. They are extremely, extremely mid, and going to be interesting summer for them with whatever comes after this disaster hell year. Then you have the Miami Heat, who I think are like very, very much like spiritual siblings of the Toronto Raptors, very statistically similar, both middling offenses, both very good defenses, both low in terms of 3-point rate. Raptors are 13th in half-court offense. The Heat are 14th. They run different offenses, but both are kind of designed to overcome the lack of individual self-creation they kind of have up and down their rosters. I just kind of think I like the Raptors' talent a little bit more. I think Scotty Barnes has like clearly been the best player on either team by a pretty comfortable margin. And I don't know, like the thing with the Heat, and the Raptors have this to some extent too, but the thing with the Heat is that they have very few guys who are like true two-way players. It's a lot of, you give up a lot on one end to bring a lot on the other end. You have your Davion Mitchell, defense first, offense meh. You have Norm Powell, offense first, defense no good. You have, Kasparis Yakachonis is playing games for them right now. Very bad defensive player. Maybe he's an okay offensive player, but it's just not a team that feels super cohesive. And, Eric Spoelstra is a wizard, but they've also just been real stop and start this year. Every time it seems like they're getting it together, they kind of fall back. And I just think I take the Raptors' track record this season over the Heat pretty comfortably. And it's not a small gap. The Raptors have 4 games of an edge in the loss column on the Heat, 3 in the win column. They're 3.5 games up total. I just think it's going to be really hard for the Heat to gain that ground, considering they just don't seem like a team that's able to string together 4, 5, 6 wins at a time. The Raptors have actually done that, and obviously they've had their swoons as well, but I think with the cushion, I feel pretty good about the Raptors holding off the Heat. And then the one team that's kind of the scariest of all these teams in the Eastern Conference is the Charlotte Hornets. They've been awesome. You could make a credible argument that they are playing as well as, any of the top 4 teams are right now, with how good those teams have been. Over the last 10 games, they are 9-1. They have been awesome. And the trio of LaMelo Ball, Con Knipple, and Brandon Miller has been ridiculous on the floor together. Moussa Diabate has been a lot of fun. Obviously, they're dealing with some suspensions right now, but Like that team has been really serious and looks quite good and dangerous, particularly as a regular season team. I have my questions about them in the playoffs, considering their defense, but offensively, they're a wagon right now. Problem is for them is like they just don't have a lot of time to make up the ground they'd have to make up on the Raptors. And they have other teams to jump as well. They're behind the Heat, they're behind the Magic. They have already passed the Atlanta Hawks because they're stinky doo-doo. But I think if you look at just the amount of time remaining here, it just seems pretty unrealistic that they're going to catch the Raptors. The Raptors have a 6-game edge in the standings on the Hornets right now. And if you just if you just look at how well the team has played, the Hornets have played over the last little while, you might say, oh, like there's some trouble. The Hornets are red hot. The Raptors are kind of mid. They've been kind of going up and down. They've had their struggles against good teams, blah, 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 blah. But like, if you go back to January the 1st, the gap between these two teams was 8 games. The Hornets, despite being maybe the hottest team in the league, going 15-7 since January 1st, have only gained 2 games on the Raptors. It was also an 8-game gap at the start of December. Like the Hornets have turned their season around, and yet they've yet to really cut into that lead that the Raptors have. And with just 27 games left, I don't see it happening because the Raptors, as much as they play a lot of good teams down the stretch, and that has been a bugaboo for them, they also have like 12 remaining games against tanking teams. You can probably notch most, if not all of those up as wins for them. And you start just like stacking these wins, you get to the mid 40s just on those tank wins alone. And all of a sudden, it's really hard for the Hornets to kind of make the math work unless they go on some kind of ridiculous. I think, what was it? Like the Sixers of a few years ago? I think it was like the first Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid year. I think Embiid was hurt and they went like 18-0 to close the season. Like maybe you could see something like that and they can cut into a lead like that. But even then, if you go 18-0, the Raptors, if they go 12-6 in the same final 18 games, and obviously there's 27 games left, but bear with me here, like you still hold on to that edge. So yeah, it's tough to gain that ground. I do think the Hornets stand a really good chance of catching at least one of the Magic and Heat. We'll see about the Sixers, with their injuries and guys out of the lineup, but I think the Hornets are going to climb a little bit here, probably be in that 7-8 game. They're 2.5 back of the Heat, 3 back of the Magic. Those feel pretty gettable considering how they've played, but 6 games is a lot of games to make up. And so, yeah, you might be sitting there like worried that the Raptors are at risk of kind of having this feel good, everything is gravy season soiled a little bit late in the season. But overall, like, as much as it feels like when they're getting rinsed by the Pistons, like things have not been great. This has been a team that's been pretty comfortably top 6 all year. And a team that has, pretty reliably gone 6-4, 7-3 over 10-game spurts. You're not really seeing a whole lot of, oh God, they went 3-7 in the last 10 and lost some ground. Like they've been pretty solid at just picking up wins as they go and not squandering stuff outside of that December swoon where I think they lost 6 of 7. Other than that, they've been pretty reliably solid. And I think that's going to carry them through over the finish line, at least in the 5th seed. And, at the very worst, the 6th. But I think 5th seed feels pretty good for the Raptors. And I think we're going to be looking a lot at those 4-5 matchups as the season winds to an end. We're going to move on and get into big league-wide stuff because it's the last chance to do that before the season returns tomorrow. And we will dig into, my sort of last comments on tanking for the year. Because, again, this is what we do. We do content. We got to milk all the sort of content out of the discourse utter while we have this time in the intervening days between the end of the All-Star game and the start of the season again. And so we'll get into that, talk about some tanking stuff, talk about some fixes I've been kind of noodling on quite a bit. And then we'll get into some other rule change stuff that I would really like to impart upon the league where I made commissioner for one day. We'll do that coming up in just one sec. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Everyone wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person. FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future. You'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for 2. That's right. Flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in. Maybe you think the Charlotte Hornets are going to go on some magical run, get to the 7 seed, scare the Knicks in the first round, make it to round 2 or 3. You can go make that futures bet right now if you feel good about it over at FanDuel. And now you can not only can you pick cash, but can also send you to the NBA Finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Today's show is also brought to you by Quo. And look, it's always a good time to think about your business communications and whether or not it's working for you the way you want it to. And yeah, sometimes there's just got to be a better way than what you've been doing. And if you are not using Quo, I can tell you there is a better way. And it is Quo, spelled Quo, the smarter way to run your business communications. Because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not only working cleaner, but you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers and not miss customers. I've talked about this before. I'm a person who calls the guy a lot because I don't know how to fix anything. So if I need something fixed around the house, I'm going to call someone to see if they can do it for me. And if they don't pick up the first try, guess what? I'm calling the next guy on the phone book or whatever we use instead of phone books these days. Google Maps, I don't know. But that's what I'm doing. I'm not waiting around for someone to answer my call 2 days later. I need that fix done now because I'm not doing it because I'm very not handy. Either way, it's no surprise that Quo is the number one rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses, from solo operators to growing teams. It makes it so your entire team is on the same page, not missing anything, and make this the year where no opportunity, no customer slips away. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/LockedInNBA. It's quo.com/LockedInNBA. Quo, no missed calls and no missed customers. Go check it out. Back at it here on your Wednesday edition of Locked On Raptors, as we're talking about if I were commish for a day. Before we dive into that, just a quick reminder, the Locked On Raptors Everyday Club is available for you to sign on up. Link in the description of the podcast. Go to the landing page, sign up there. $5 a month, $50 for the year. Gets you ad-free episodes of the show every day, which is very cool. Uninterrupted me. What a great pitch. Also, it gets you access to our Locked On Discord, which is a Discord for the entire Locked On network. It's separate from our Raptors Discord, which is staying free, but you can join the Locked On crew and have another place to talk about sports with internet pals. It's a great thing. Come sign up. Link in the description of the podcast. All right. Let's dig into sort of my final thoughts on the many things that we've been talking about sort of league-wide over the last week or so, because that's what we do during All-Star. We complain about the state of the NBA. And look, I should say off the top, like, I think, broadly speaking, the on-court product when the teams are trying is quite good. And it's why there are some things I'd like to see adjusted and tweaked with the structure of the league to encourage more of those games between all of the very good talent we have in the league right now to mean something, to be competitive, to be games between two teams that are actually trying. And I do think the single biggest issue right now in terms of the on-court product, and look, I'm not going to get into sort of the bigger issues right now going on with the league. A lot of those things I don't have a fix for right now. Gambling, interactions, players, franchises, blah, 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 cap circumvention. There's a really great piece by Howard Beck today over at The Ringer, if you want to check that out, about the sort of many crises facing Adam Silver right now. And a lot of those are beyond my sort of sphere of influence in this particular exercise we're going to dig into. And I think they are far more important issues in many cases. You have just sort of the ugly tendrils of capitalism seeping into all kinds of regular day life stuff through sports in a way that's pretty grim and pretty upsetting. And I think needs to be very much thought about at top of mind by the decision makers at the league. But when it comes to the actual on-court product, I do think there's some stuff that, we've kind of noodled on tanking for the last week or so. It's been the topic du jour. It's going to remain a big topic down the stretch. Thankfully, the Toronto Raptors do not have to be involved in any of this down the stretch. It's delightful, especially after last year when they pioneered all the tanking strategies that teams are using this year and drawing such ire for. It's nice that the Raptors have kind of left their imprint and moved on to being a real team. It's very, very refreshing. But I think, looking at the way that you can kind of try to eradicate tanking. And look, you're never going to fully eradicate bad teams. Bad teams are going to exist. That's how leagues work. You're not going to have a league where there's 30 good teams. It's just not how these things, like, unless you have everyone being 500, that would be a nightmare. That would suck. That's basically the NHL. You're not going to have that. There will be bad teams always. But I do think you have to do something to take away this sort of incentive for teams to just give up on the last third of the season, because it has all kinds of far-reaching, broader concerns, right? Okay, the standings. How much do the standings actually matter if a third of the teams are not trying and you get to play all these sort of teams that are just going out of the way to be anti-competitive down the stretch? And what does that do to the integrity of the standings overall? What does that do to just like the viewing experience? If you're at a game, if you're watching on TV, like it's very hard for me to square the idea that in a competitive enterprise, a third of the teams are trying to not be competitive because there's an advantage to it. I think you have to find a way to like sever the tie between being as bad as possible and having the best chance at winning the draft lottery. This is not a novel concept. Of course, my thing I went into last week on the show, the only real fix of tanking is you got to abolish the draft. The draft is the thing, the structural thing that causes all of these incentive structures to take place and to exist. You have to get rid of that if you want to fully get rid of teams trying to lose games on purpose. You're not going to do that. I said it last week on the show, and I feel very, very, very like strongly about this, that there people who run American sports leagues, fans, owners, all this stuff, they're too scared to do something that drastic. And so it's going to be something a little less drastic. But I do think there's a way to do it in a way that does, in fact, take away tanking and being as bad as possible as like the sole crutch for bad teams and their quest to get better. And I understand there's this sort of notion that, well, the only way for small market teams to get good players on their roster is to tank and draft them and get the years of security that comes with drafting those players. I think that's kind of unimaginative and frankly boring. And I don't think that's actually true. I think we've seen plenty of teams that can take creative avenues to improving and getting better. And I think if you find ways to sort of incentivize just being competent, building good teams, and then using that position to parlay into being better, you will find other ways that sort of pop up of team building and sort of best practices. And you'll have a diverse and varied array of the ways teams come into power. Like I think the Pacers are such a great example of this. They didn't tank. They got Ben Mathurin with their best draft pick. And I think Jarris Walker, in a couple of years where they had an in-between two eras. But they went and were proactive and said, we're going to go get Tyrese Halliburton. We're going to trade for Pascal Siakam when his value is diminished. Yeah, we're going to be risky. We're going to trade for Ivica Zubac right now because it would be awesome if we got him on the team. And then also if we have the sort of luck of getting a top pick next year and not giving up the sort of 5th through 9th pick to the Clippers that they potentially owe here. Holy crap, we've just gambled and really, really set ourselves up beautifully here for the next, 5-10 years. And so I also think like if there's any fan base that should understand that tanking is not your only, salvation and shouldn't be the only way that you go about building a team, it's the Toronto Raptors fan base. We saw this team win a draft lottery in 2006 and drafted Andrea Bargnani. That didn't save anybody, except for Primo Pasta and their, network market saturation or whatever. You have the clear example of you trade for Kyle Lowry with a smart, shrewd move, and then you slowly improve incrementally over time. You invest in player development, in sort of your facilities and making your franchise a place where people want to be once you've gone and traded for them. Used trades as a way to improve your team, turn a packet of beans into a house and all of that. That is a viable building path. It's not the easiest path, but it's an interesting one and it's viable. And I think if you changed up the incentive structures of the draft lottery enough, you would force more teams to go that route because tanking would not be their only salvation. What I have in mind is like a pretty flat lottery where it's not just the top 4 teams that get pulled out of the hat. You draft the entire lottery order from the teams that you have in your hopper. And you also include the teams that lose in the first round of the playoffs. It makes it a 22-team lottery where, yes, there's still a descending order and the teams that are the worst will have a better chance, but it's not the 15% chance at number 1, 50% chance at top 4, worst case scenario, you pick 5th situation that we have right now. Instead, you could tank an entire year. And if you end up picking 11th, sorry, you should have been better. You should have made other moves to improve your team. You should have not shut your guys down halfway through the year and instead, I don't know, maybe played them in basketball games and brought along their player development by having them play in basketball games. All this stuff. Like, I just think making it so you can just be awful and get bailed out by some draft lottery balls is just not an interesting way to have your league operate. And I think, it would force teams to get serious. It would force teams to invest in medical staffs, in proper player development, in, the facilities that make a franchise a desirable place to be. There will be shame associated to being bad every year because they're not really getting anything out of it. And I think if you can shame your New Orleans Pelicans and Sacramento Kings out of being truly bottom of the barrel dumpster franchises and actually like making hires and doing things to facilitate growth within their players and team and all this stuff, like you will have a healthier league as a result. And you won't have this incentive to lose all the time. I just think it's again, you'll have the naysayers who say, oh, like the worst team should get rewarded. Like, why? Just because it's always been that way? Like, I don't think that's really a good way to do it. And again, I think if I was doing a lottery, I'd include the teams that lose in the first round of the playoffs. Why? Because right now you have teams tanking out of the play-in to get into the bottom part of the lottery. Like, you're always going to have the sort of goalpost move a little bit, but I do think if you stop it at teams that lose in the first round of the playoffs, you're going to have teams that are incentivized to, keep on pushing and make the playoffs out of the play-in because, oh, well, I still have a pretty good chance of being in the lottery. I have a shot at getting a top 14 pick. That's a cool thing. And you're also just never going to get a team tanking out of a first round series, right? You're never going to get a team that's like down, 2-1 in a series and says, well, pack it in because, we're going to get our draft pick now. No, they're actually going to try. And if they win the series, great. If they lose the series, it's at least a little bonus to the fans of the teams that lost in the first round. Those teams, by the way, whose fans most likely are going to be like, oh, you lost in the first round. Great. Are you stuck now? Are you this middling team forever? Should it be blown up? No. Instead, you have this extra little chance that maybe it's a 2.5% chance at winning the lottery, but there's an extra chance there that you might be able to kind of pull yourself out of the middle. And again, it just changes the incentive structure to divorce extreme losing from best chance to win the lottery. And so, yeah, like I've done it. I've kind of gone through in like a fake lottery simulator thing. I can post a thing on social of what it would look like. But if it's like a 7.5% chance for the 3 worst teams and then like a 6% chance for the next batch of teams, and you kind of go descending from there, you can have it so, yes, the worst teams still have the advantage, but it's in no way a thing you can count on as a team building strategy. And I think that just solves a lot of this tanking stuff that we have down the stretch of the season. On top of that, like obviously the clear answer to so many of these problems is shorten the season, play 70 games. Yes, you take a short-term game day revenue and concessions hit if you're an owner. You would hope that the longer-term health of the league, better player sort of dependability and reliability and availability and all that stuff would be sort of a long-term benefit that will see the values of teams go up down the line. Scarcity works for the NFL. There's no reason it can't also work for the NBA. Fewer games does not have to mean less money overall. It just means less money in the short term from gate revenue, which it's not a gate revenue league. For the NHL, I get it. The NHL is like a full gate revenue league. If they don't have gate revenue, they're in trouble. The NBA does not rely on gate revenue for much of anything in the grand scheme of their income pool. And so, yeah, shorten the season and do a flattened lottery that involves the first round playoff teams. And I think you're kind of on the way to a solution here, even if the actual solution is get rid of the draft entirely and start from scratch with the system. We'll come back on the other side and get into some quick hitter, sort of smaller on-court fixes that I'd like to see, in this one day where I'm the commissioner again, before I move on to talk about the Raptors every single day again. But again, we got to milk this all-star break for everything it's worth. And there are some things, if I was put in power, that I would do on day one that I think would seriously improve the on-court product and help, again, the very good players that are across this entire league shine in a way that they, currently do shine, but could shine even further with these little subtle tweaks. We'll get into that to close things out in just one sec. Today's show is brought to you by friends over at Indeed. Workplace chaos, deadline stacking up, overflowing inboxes, and the one position you have to fill is still sitting open. When the pressure's on, you need the right hire. This is the job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Indeed sponsored jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location. You're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your posts. You are putting it right in front of those people. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I will be talking to you about Indeed right now, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all the boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show will get $75 in a sponsored job credit to help get your premium status for that job that it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about it here on this show. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Go check it out. Back out here on your Wednesday edition of Locked On Raptors. I'm commish for a day, and then I'm retiring from talking about the league's ills. I promise you, we will get into more fun stuff as the Raptors return to action tomorrow against the Chicago Bulls. But yeah, let's finish up my sort of quick thoughts here on what I would do if I wasn't, in fact, in power, had the chance to make some changes to the on-court product. And again, I think the on-court product, when the teams are actually trying, is quite good. I think there's a lot of stylistic diversity around the league right now. I think that's great. There's a lot of different types of very good players, which leads to all kinds of different types of team build strategies around those players, and that leads to different styles of play. And I think, yeah, there was maybe a time where sort of 3-point spamming and high pick and roll, spread pick and roll, helio ball, and kick it out to shooters was kind of the dominating style of play. I don't think that's actually true right now. And I think most nights you're seeing matchups between teams that play differently because they have suited the way their teams play to the unique skill sets of their best players. And I think that's like the best thing about basketball. Styles make fights, all of that. And so I have like no issues with the on-court product, again, in games where teams are both trying to win. I do think, though, there are some things you could adjust about games to just sort of subtly improve the overall flow of the game and improve, the entertainment value just a little bit. I talked about yesterday on the show, and I firmly believe this would literally be the first thing I do upon taking over as the commissioner of the NBA. I would change overtime rules. It is no longer 5 minutes. It is a game to 11, maybe win by 2, maybe it's 11 dead, whatever. I think it would be just like this very subtly wonderful change to the way we do overtime, which for me has been one of like the least interesting things about NBA basketball for my entire fandom. The 5-minute overtime frame, which invites a lot more stoppages and slowdowns and timeouts and free throws down the stretch. It's just no fun to me. Whereas if you had a game in like, the exciting conclusion is it's a tie game. Oh my God, it's going to overtime. Instead of, all right, let's hope this 5-minute frame gives us something of note. Instead, you have a game to 11 where it's just first to 11 wins and the game ends on a basket. Like, I think it would be an absolute sensation. And look, we've seen other teams do this with overtime before, right? Like, you don't have to keep it the way it's been forever just because it's been that way forever. You can, in the NHL, institute a 3-on-3 overtime. Super entertaining until it kind of got coached out and it's not so fun anymore. But like at its peak, 3-on-3 overtime is wonderful. You have the Ghost Runner in baseball, like has totally changed extra innings for the better to make it more exciting. So you're not watching an 18-inning game on a Tuesday night in July. It's so much better and so much more entertaining and conducive to like following the sport in an accessible way. And I think it's not like a huge like existential concern that overtime is kind of lame in the NBA, but I do think there's zero downside to changing it to this game to 11 thing. It also just like taps into the way most human beings who play basketball. Yeah, if you're a pro, sure, you're playing with a clock. But if you are just like going to a pickup gym, like most people who play the sport do, you're playing to 11. It is like, it gets to like a core style of play that people can identify with and understand. And I just think it would be such a, like, again, a low downside, incredibly high upside change for the league to make. And games that end on buckets are cool. You don't even have to do it for the playoffs. You can have your double and triple overtime classics in the playoffs if you want. But in the regular season, I don't need a triple overtime game. And every time you do get one, like for every one of those, you have 10 dud 5-minute overtime frames that are, again, bogged down by stoppages and timeouts. Get rid of it and give me a game to 11, and that should be overtime. The Elam ending will never come to like regulation, and I think that's totally fine. You don't want to mess with records and time and the 48-minute clock and all that stuff, but overtime, there's no sanctity in overtime, and a game to 11 would just be so much fun. We saw it in the All-Star game. Scotty Barnes, there was a game to 5, I think, in overtime. Like, make it to 11 in the NBA. Make it to 7. I don't care, but 11 feels right. Won't take too long. Teams can score 11 points very quickly. That's like 4 possessions if you're really going for it. And yeah, I think there's just like so much upside to that shift that I really, really hope we see it at some point. And maybe the sort of inclusion in the All-Star game of that target score overtime is one step towards it. Small thing, probably not near the top of Adam Silver's list of things to do, but it would be just an absolute delight. Get rid of live ball timeouts in the fourth quarter, at least, is another thing. They suck. They sap the flow. They put too much power in the clipboards of coaches. And I think the single biggest common complaint you get about the NBA and basketball from non-fans, casual fans, is the end of games takes way too long. And it is the most accurate casual complaint you could possibly conjure. Like, if my grandma has like said to me in the last couple of years, wow, these games really take a long time to finish, huh? Like, you know, it's a problem. My grandma is not a very tuned in fan, but when she does tune in, she notices it and picks up on it. And it is like exhausting, these timeouts late in games. The free throw battle is enough. Like, timeouts on top of that are just excruciating. They slow things down. And that would be, I think, a pretty clear day one change for me as well. The FIBA game flows so much better. Look, I know you got to have commercials, got to have stops, breaks in the action so you can go to commercial, but you don't got commercials in the last 2-3 minutes of a fourth quarter of a game. Or you don't have to if you've done all your commercial breaks before. Like you can find a way to keep the last few minutes of games unencumbered by stoppages. And I think it would be just such a benefit, or really improve. Like think about the most exciting games. They are the ones where there are not stoppages impeding the action in the final couple minutes. I think back to what was it, Game 7 of the 2016 finals. Like there was no stoppages at the end of that game. It was LeBron block and Kyrie 3 and back and forth action. That's what you want in games where it matters. Let the players decide it. Don't let stoppages and inbound plays and all that stuff decide it. Just like play the game. And I think it would be an absolute, just like a game changer for the flow and the entertainment value late in games. And the last thing is get rid of basket interference rules. I call CBL games. They play FIBA rules in the CBL. The number of cool putback dunks you get as a result of the laid back rules around basket interference, totally worth it. More dunks is good. More putback dunks, like one of the most exciting kinds of dunks, totally worth it. There's no need to be like, oh, was the ball in the cylinder or was it not? No, it's just the dunk went in. That's cool. Get back on defense and start the next play. Anyway, that's it. I'm done. Now the All-Star break is over. The Raptors play tomorrow. We're going to talk about ball again tomorrow. Talk about the Raptors. And that will do it. And we will be back to sort of leave all of this complaining and pondering about the state of the league behind. I just wanted to get the last couple things off my chest as, it's the All-Star break, and that is the time to do these things. But the stretch run begins tomorrow, and I'm very excited for that. So we'll leave it there. Thank you so much. Follow, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend. All that good stuff. Join the Discord, link in the description of the podcast. You can sign up for the Everydayer Club. Link also down there. $5 a month, $50 for the year gets you ad-free episodes of the show, plus some other fun perks, including a Locked On network-wide Discord, which is lots of fun. And we will leave it there. Thank you so much for hanging out. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Ugh.